Yes, we're back for more of Dave Parker's autobiography, A Life of Baseball and Brotherhood, the Cobra. And we're on to chapter 8, entitled Mr. Bojangles. That should be interesting. It starts with a quote from Gene Clines of the Pirates. Willie always talked about passing the baton to the younger players. That was the Pirate way throughout the organization. Didn't matter if that guy was making a move for your job or if he was on the way up and you were on the way down. We were always brothers first. Stargell and Clemente did that for me, and I was ready to do that for Dave when he got to the majors, regardless of how competitive things got between us. And for Parker in 1973, it was only a matter of time. And now on to Dave's account. The Pirates finished April of 73 with an 8-7 record. That's nothing to be ashamed of for most teams, but Pittsburgh had created a level of expectation, and there were concerns everywhere. Clines only got up to bat 13 times in the month of April. Zisk, same thing, just 13 plate appearances during that time span. There were a few rainouts during the first month that may have messed with the rhythm of the ball club. Sankey was playing every day in right field and started the season hitting .364. Stargell was among the league leaders in home runs, while also batting above .360. Yet something was amiss with the team. Blass was winless in his first 3 starts, with an ERA above 8, and still couldn't quite figure out his control issues. The team lost 6 of its last 7 games to close out the month. Something was off, but we'll get to that. Charleston, West Virginia was an industrial city in the middle of a population decline, from 85,000 as late as 1960 down to 70,000 when I got there. Now, I'm no economist, but with a growing country, that number was headed in the wrong direction. Same with game attendance. Besides baseball hat and helmet night, the Charleston Charlies held ladies softball night, mustache night, topless night for bald fans, and Bob Feller night. Even that baseball clown, Max Patkin, showed up to entertain the crowd. Sometimes there were even fireworks at the ballpark, like every other game by the end of the season, illuminating the Charleston night. Guess the attendance contest matching announced figures what was printed in the purchase program. The ballplayers aimed for the home right field fence, where every home run resulted in a delicious steak dinner from a local joint. The recession began to show its face in the United States in general, and in Charleston specifically in 1973, but the general manager did everything he could to resist the overall economic malaise. The fans who attended the game seemed to love their Charlies, and the Pirates made sure to stock the ball club with premium talent. Our outfield was filled with the Pirates' crown jewel prospects at the time. My old pal Ed Ott, Augie Augustine, who manned center, and me. Frankie Tavares was with us at shortstop. In previous seasons, the Charlies served as something of a taxi squad for the Buccos in the event of any injuries or ineffective play, as you might imagine. While the organization wanted all their minor league affiliates to fight for their respective league championships, they didn't think twice about snatching a high-performing player when necessary. This was the only potential outcome, keeping my spirits positive down there. We all reported to Watt Powell Park upon arriving in Charleston. The stadium was smaller than the average minor league ball field. The local reporters expected me to hit 35 homers there. I was hoping I wouldn't be around long enough to meet that projection. Manager Joe Morgan, not the Red second baseman, put us all at ease pretty quickly. He was a little under 6 foot and fair-haired, and I kind of loved Morgan's heavy New England accent. He sounded a lot like Richie Hebner with the Buccos. I'd hear him softly say, "Paca," when he was writing out the lineup card. Morgan wasn't exactly a player's manager, but as long as we arrived on time and prepared, he left us alone. I greeted most of my teammates, caught up with Eddie Ott, who laughed about how we were working our way up the ladder together, and settled into my locker. About an hour later, I felt a tap on my shoulder. "You ready?" Charlie Boo asked me, holding a set of car keys in his hand. I grabbed my things and then followed him out of the clubhouse. Charlie Howard was the first baseman / outfielder in the minor league system of the Pirates since 1963. Think of it in these terms. Charlie began playing pro baseball 1 year after Stargell made the majors. He hit over 25 home runs 4 times in the minors, drove in over 79 runs 4 times, on base percentage above .375 4 times. Everyone in the organization I ever met adored Charlie Boo, as we called him. Year after year, I'd see him on the Pirate City fields and watch less talented players encouraged by select coaches, executives, and scouts. It always bothered me how they overlooked Charlie. I wasn't the only one to voice this opinion among the fellows either. Get a few screwdrivers in Doc, and he'd convey the guilt he felt that Charlie Boo wasn't with all of us. I just never understood how someone with his talent could fall through the organizational cracks. The man just loved baseball, and I could see that once we drove up to the extended trailer where he lived during the season. His place was located in a more rundown area, about 7 miles outside of Charleston. Very small rooms, but a working kitchen, side bedroom, a phone, and a tiny TV across from the couch. That's your bed for now. Charlie handed me a beer, lit up a Winston cigarette, and talked about our home ball field, the weather-related elements, and the parks in the other towns of the International League. I listened, but the more he spoke, the more it became real that I was stuck in the minors. Charlie recognized my resentment. I was wearing it all over my face. "You don't think I don't know what you're feeling?" Charlie said. "You feel some anger. You feel some jealousy. You feel frustration at how those fools don't see what you see in the box score. Now you can take that and let it eat away all inside you, or you can get your ass to the park tomorrow and take it out on the damn baseball." Charlie dashed out his cigarette and said goodnight with his body language. Before he went to bed, I got his attention a final time. "What happened to Zellman?" He sighed, lit one more Winston, and sat back down. "We were playing in Mexico a couple winters ago. Me, Dick Sharon, Tom DeTore, Zell. We were out having drinks at this hole-in-the-wall bar. A woman came up to him and got to talking. And you know, you can't just bring a woman that's not your wife back to the hotel, so they went to a place. You remember how Zell wore all those gold chains? He came back to the bar and realized they weren't around his neck. We begged him not to go, but he did anyway. 'I'll be right back,' he said. That was the last time any of us saw him alive. They found him dead in an alley the next day. The police told us he fell through a roof, but we went over there, didn't see any holes in that building. There were police all around his body, and a couple of them had this look on their faces like they knew what happened. We never found out the truth. Mexico can be a horrible place to play baseball sometimes. Go to sleep, kid." The next night, the town's Chamber of Commerce threw us a welcome home banquet at this small diner, the Rose City Cafeteria. As I was mingling with the other fellows, I heard some raised voices. I turned around and saw a familiar-looking brother entering the party, like a celebrity or something. It was Bill Withers, the singer who was just making a name for himself with that song, "Ain't No Sunshine." Born and raised in West Virginia, Withers was back in the area for the local Morris Harvey College Arts Festival. At the time, Withers was celebrated as a blue-collar airport worker who managed to break into the music business past his 30th birthday. He made his way over to me, and I introduced myself. We grabbed a drink. "Why are you so sad?" Withers asked me, as the bartender handed him a Chivas Regal alongside my new drink of choice, a gin and tonic. I explained my situation, and he responded with a pleasant sigh and laughed. "It took me 14 years to be an overnight success," he said. I know I can do it," I said. "I can play in the big leagues." "You think I learned to sing yesterday?" he said. Then someone called Bill over, and he patted me on the shoulder. "Your time will come, Junior." He leaned in before walking away. Maybe it's almost there. I arrived at Watt Powell Park for the Charlie's opening game against the Rochester Red Wings, the Orioles AAA team, on a brisk Thursday evening. The streets were covered with slush and ice just days before. Definitely was not an early spring in Charleston. As you can imagine, I was still working through my annoyance with being down in AAA. There were several pregame festivities. The Pirates directed their minor league affiliates to honor Roberto's memory by retiring his number 21 throughout the organization, another example of the man's impact on baseball at the time. There were 1,500 Charleston fans who came out to greet what seemed like their favorite player, Jim Campanis. Campy responded by hitting 2 home runs into the left field seats, which drove the crowd wild. Excited fans banged on the clubhouse door after the game, chanting, "Campy, Campy, Campy." I went 2 for 4, and my timing felt good. But over the course of that series, something hit me. There ain't nothing but children and old men in AAA. During the Sunday game, I faced 2 pitchers, Paul Mitchell, a 23-year-old prospect, and Dave Leonard, a 32-year-old veteran trying to get back to the bigs. The young ones were trying to prove they got the stuff to perform at the highest level. Didn't matter for them if they went 10-2 in AAA with a 2.50 ERA if they couldn't get a big league fastball by you. The other dude has already proven that he's got ability, but needs to prove he can still get guys out. I used a separate approach for the rookies and one for the older pitchers. I guessed high fastball for the young cats and waited out the egos on the older dudes. They both gave me 1 pitch every at-bat that I could clobber. I slept like a baby that night, got my own place the following morning, and then treated myself to some music at the local record store in Charleston. I drove to the ballpark with Charlie Boo later in the week, easing into our night with Bill Withers' Harlem filling the car. My man just put me in the right frame of mind. Charlie caught me grinning. "What are you smiling about?" he said, with half a smirk himself. I didn't say a word, just a friendly shrug, but I felt that I had solved the puzzle with a grand prize waiting for me. By the end of April, I was hitting .316 with 14 RBIs and 38 at-bats. I was catching my stride, living the best life possible in AAA. The clubhouse had a good group of fellows. I delivered my share of towel snaps at Tavares, who was playing short, and he still didn't dig it. Otter was yelling over at me to keep it down every so often. Having Charlie Boo hitting in the cleanup spot right in front of me was a perfect placement by Joe Morgan. Charlie was known for having a brilliant feel for the strike zone. He could work out a walk like nobody's business. Then not only did they have to pitch to me, but they usually started me off with a high fastball. By the middle of May, my average climbed to 333. And remember, this wasn't the Pacific Coast Pinball League. Around baseball circles, the International League was known as a pitcher's league. By the end of the month, the Charlies were in first place in the National Division, and the Rochester Red Wings led the American. There were two teams. We were two teams that didn't get along, and the upcoming road series would be a test to our bad blood. The Red Wings took the first game, 4-3, in a rain-soaked thriller that ended with Charlie Boo striking out with a tying run on second. We won the next game of the series, 5-4, when John Lamb threw a 3-2 heater to Royal Stillman that the umpire called a strike. The Red Wings manager, Joe Altobelli, challenged the call and got their whole team fired up. Tensions were flowing into the rubber match, which was delayed by rain, but once we got onto the field, we owned them. Charlie Boo worked out a walk against their starter, Don Hood, and then I stepped up and smashed a triple into the right field corner. Later in the game, Charlie and I hit dingers to make it a laugher. After the final out was recorded, one of the Red Wings infielders said something to Tavares. Things got heated, the dugouts emptied, and the police at the game ran out onto the field. As we walked through the tunnel leading to the clubhouse, the local Rochester police were getting in our face. One of our teammates yelled, "Asshole," and the policeman followed us into the clubhouse. "He said it," this one short, fat cop called out. The policeman was pointing at Charlie Boo. Our manager tried to defuse the situation, but Charlie defended himself. "I didn't say that." "I heard it, and I saw you say that," the cop shot back, though you could tell he wasn't quite sure what he saw. We managed to get Charlie Boo out of the clubhouse, onto the team bus, and back to the hotel. Luckily, the police didn't make it there after we left Silver Stadium, but Charlie was fuming back in the room. He let out a laugh that sounded like sorrow. "I'm tired, man," Charlie said to me with a weary voice, laying on the bed, smoking a Winston. "I'm sick of this bullshit. Why won't they just trade me if they don't want me?" Obviously, he was talking about the Pirates organization. This is what roster depth sometimes looks and sounds like behind the scenes. "You know the Pirates wouldn't keep you around if they didn't want you." I tried to calm him the way he'd done for me so many times over the last 2 months. Charlie Boo wasn't taking his own medicine. "Here's what you need to learn, kid. When you get up there, you better make damn sure you got someone watching your ass. Because I got nobody like that here. They only keep me around for that designated pinch hitter shit." He wasn't wrong, and I stopped trying to soothe him. I could tell he just wanted me to listen. It was 3-4 years ago. I was at Columbus. Don Hoke was the manager. He was a red-ass white guy, but we got on fine. He respected me as a ball player. When '69 was ending, we all knew that the Pirates were going to fire Shepard. Joe Brown told Don that he was next in line to manage the club. I had a drink with Don, and he said that if he got the job, I was going with him to Pittsburgh. Then he told me that if he didn't get the job, his friend Gene Mock was going to bring him to Montreal. Don said, "Wherever I go, you go." Charlie dashed out his smoke in the room ashtray and then lit another. Murtaugh jumped in at the last minute, said he wanted the job back. Him and Joe Brown, you know the deal. Hoke didn't get it. I heard he really thought it was his. A week later, Hoke's in Chicago, and some Hispanic guy stole his wife's car while they were leaving a department store. Hoke ran after him and caught up to the car. As he's about to punch that guy's lights out, he had a heart attack right in the street. Died right there. Charlie's voice cracked a little. I liked Hoke, and not just because I was his guy, but I was his guy. And you better make sure every manager you play for wants to see your ass on that field. I didn't say a word the rest of the night. And by the way, that's not the end of the story of Charlie Boo and the cops. About 7 or 8 weeks later, our team was back in Rochester. When he entered the clubhouse, the police were waiting for Charlie and arrested him for harassing an officer. They handcuffed Charlie and threw him into the paddy wagon, in uniform, and headed to the local jail. Once he arrived at the station, the sergeant on duty refused to lock Charlie up. He called the Pirates, and everything was settled from a legal standpoint in 90 minutes. Still, once Charlie returned to the clubhouse, the league fined him $300. Charlie calmly brought a check to Joe Morgan's office the next day, still pleading his case. Sometime later, while on the road, Charlie got a call in his motel room. "Mr. Howard?" "Yes?" "The president of the International League is in the bar area of the hotel. He would like to see you right away." Charlie had some idea of what this was about and found George Sisler Jr., son of the great Hall of Fame first baseman for the St. Louis Browns, sitting very properly on a stool in the bar. In an extremely stern voice, Sisler demanded to know the details of the incident with the Rochester police a couple weeks ago. Charlie once again was forced to explain himself. Sisler wasn't convinced. "Why am I to believe you?" "You know why, Mr. Sisler? Because asshole is a white man's word. If I was going to cuss you out, I would have said motherfucker." Sisler stared at Charlie Boo for a few moments, opened his wallet, and handed him $300. Oh, I would have paid $1,000 to witness that moment. Unfortunately, I wasn't on the road with the Charleston Charlies then. That's a pretty interesting story, too. At the end of June, with my average standing at 333, leading the league in hits, doubles, and triples, I was named to the International League All-Star team, and the Charlies were in first place for our division. My theory of first pitch hitting the prospect and waiting for the second or third pitch from veterans was working to a T. I accomplished everything necessary to prove my point to the Pirates. Then I found out that Verdon had moved Sangy completely out of right field. Gene Kleins finally got his chance to start on a regular basis, and he sure deserved it. But that also meant there was probably a need for another outfielder. I didn't care if I sat the bench for the rest of the season up there. I would just be in a place where I belonged. I walked into Joe Morgan's office after a ball game and was greeted by his usually gruff but friendly, "Hey, Paca. Skip, I love playing for you, and I think I've done everything you've asked, but I need more money." I remember a player named George Kopash who asked for more bread from the Pirates after a good AAA season in '72, and Joe Brown sent him packing. Maybe they'd do the same with me. They weren't sending me down, and any team that would trade for me would probably have a spot open on their big league roster. Morgan offered an understanding sigh, as if he knew this was coming. "If I could pay you more, I would," he said, "but that's not for me to decide. You have my permission to call Pittsburgh." I dialed up Joe Brown, and he was firm but polite. I always respected that he treated me like a man. This was my first high-level negotiation. Brown refused my request for more money, but indicated that next year would be my time. I made my position quite clear. If I'm not given a raise by the time we get back from the road trip, I'm going home. The Charlies went on the road. We rocked all those towns, and when we came back, my check was no different. So I just grabbed some clothes, hopped into the pre, and split. I was the runaway child, running wild. I spent the next day in Cincinnati, hanging out at my home, watching TV game shows and reruns in the family room. Mama kept asking me why I was doing this. My sister was in my ear about it too. Even young Lonnie gave me the business when he got home from school. I just kept thinking about how much all the fans loved Charlie Boo and about that damn trailer park, having problems finding a nice place to live. That sure as hell wasn't going to be me. "You better call them," Mama said sternly later in the afternoon. "They'll call me," I replied, my eyes focused on watching Let's Make a Deal. That's exactly what it was. I was stuck in my own version of a game show. I knew in my heart what was behind door number 2, right field. And the consolation prize? My ass on a stool in the Pirates clubhouse, even if it was as the 25th man. Daddy didn't say much when he first got home from work. Eventually, Mama just threw up her hands and went into the kitchen to make dinner. Daddy changed the channel to put on the Walter Cronkite News and then sat in his chair. "You know what you're doing?" Daddy said softly, his eyes on Cronkite. I thought about my answer. "I know they're going to call," I said. Daddy just kept watching the TV. "You got responsibilities. That's why I'm doing this," I said. The phone rang the next day. "Dave, it's Joe Brown. What's the problem?" "I'm ready for the Pirates, Mr. Brown. Now, if you're not ready for me, then I deserve more money for being down in AAA. "Dave, we can't do that. If we do this for you, then everyone—" "I'm not everyone," I said. "We both know how talented you are, and we really want you to return to the Charlies." Silence on the phone for minutes until— "I can't do that." More silence. Joe asked me to see it from his perspective. He never raised his voice. "We have the exhibition game with the Charlies next week. I hope to see you there playing for Charleston. We've never let you down before." "You cut me 3 times, I said. "Dave, I don't think you're hearing me. We won't let you down. You have my word on that. Now, please, go back to Charleston." I was only 22 years old, but I caught his drift. Joe Brown was trying to tell me something without stating it. I took him at his word that he'd make this right. In my heart, you know what? I believed him. But how they treated Charlie Boo was still in my heart, too. For that, I took an extra day before getting back in the pre to head back to Charleston. I returned to the team on July 1st, just in time to participate in the Charleston Charlies Pirates exhibition game at Three Rivers Stadium. It was called the Pie Trainer Hypo game, named after the legend who passed away the year before, with the attendance proceeds going to charity. Fans came to see us. There were over 12,000 folks who bought tickets to watch the Pirates pounce on their AAA affiliate. The Charlies started Bruce Keeson, who was still working through injury issues. And guess who took the mound for the big club? Baby brother. Larry DeMary was recalled from Salem just so Verdon didn't have to burn through more starters, which they needed since Blas was having a terrible season. The Pirates beat up on Keeson, scoring 6 runs and 8 hits in 3 innings. Klein continued his hot hitting now that he was the starting right fielder, touching up Keeson with an inside-the-park job. Demery was hanging in there against us until we tagged him with 6 runs in the 4th to take the lead. Old Verdon wouldn't take Demery out of the game, but he settled down after that, going 6 innings. The Pirates ended up beating us 11-8, but it was fun to be playing in a major league ballpark. After the game, Joe Brown found me in the clubhouse, and we had some public privacy. I haven't forgotten our conversation, he said quietly. I leaned into him and smiled. Me neither. About a week later, we returned from a road trip to find that our field was completely flooded due to recent storms. Life in the minors. I arrived at the ballpark and found mops near my locker to clean up the excess water. Parker? I turned around and walked quickly into Morgan's office. Gene Klein's just suffered a knee injury. They say it's bad. He could be out for at least a month. That's terrible, I said. Joe Brown wants you on the next flight to San Diego, he replied. You're going to the majors. My last taste of his accent. It stayed with me for a while. The majors. I thanked Morgan, grabbed my stuff, and split. As I was leaving the clubhouse, the man who loved baseball more than anyone I ever met was entering to prepare for that night's game. I heard about Klein's, Charlie Booth said to me, lighting a Winston. I nodded. It's always a weird thing, those situations. It's not so much that someone is not happy for you, but just the painful acknowledgement that time is passing them by. You played that real good, kid, he said. Then he slapped me 5 and walked to his locker. One of the clubhouse dudes drove me to the airport to catch the early flight to see what was behind door number 2. Charlie Howard spent 11 years going from town to town, from Canada to the Carolinas, entertaining thousands of fans throughout the minor leagues with his swift hitting, the old soft shoe of elegant left field play, and his first base defensive savvy. He talked of the baseball life smarter than anyone I knew to that point of my career. Charleston went on to win the 1973 International League Championship. Charlie Booth finished the year with a .394 on base percentage, a .269 batting average, 15 homers, and 79 RBIs. He walked 98 times. Joe Morgan named him MVP of the team. His contract was sold to the Mexican League after the 1974 season. And that was that. Chapter 9, Here I Am. Little break for some water. This is from Dave Winfield of the San Diego Padres. I came to San Diego in late June 1973. Everything was new to me. Coming straight from college to the major leagues, I had never been part of a professional system. Seeing the Pirates on the other side of the field, just 2 weeks into my career, they had swagger. They were bold. They were brash. They had all these guys of color, and they were good. The lumber company. And here comes this rookie, Dave Parker, surrounded by all that veteran leadership. It's kind of a bad word, but I was a little envious. I would think to myself, what would it be like to be a part of that? Now back to the other Dave, Dave Parker. After 2 flights and 8 hours of travel, I landed at Lindbergh Field in San Diego as a major leaguer for the very first time. The terminal was filled with rows and rows of passengers sitting in attached hard chairs, watching connected, coin-operated television sets while awaiting their trips. As I hustled past the gates in my long-sleeved paisley shirt, bright red pants, and large leather man bag, I stared at all these folks dropping their nickels and dimes into the pay TVs, and one thought was just mind-boggling. My ass is going to be on that box in an hour. I got to San Diego Stadium with the game already underway and reached the players' entrance. It felt so cool to respond to the security guard who asked what I needed. I'm Dave Parker, and I said it with a smile and the polite confidence to ensure that there'd be no issue. Plus, no fan in their right mind would come to a ballpark wearing my ensemble. There was no welcome wagon, just lockers filled with street clothes alongside extra jerseys and pants. The clubhouse man walked over with my uniform and spikes. You're wearing number 39, he said. I hadn't been a guy married to a number since I was in Little League, and it wasn't until later that I realized the Pirates gave me Bob Veal's old number. I was just in a rush to get into the dugout. They put me in Klein's locker, with Gene headed back to Pittsburgh for evaluation of his leg injury. There was really no time to take it all in. Just got dressed and walked briskly through the tunnel into the dugout. Darkness, 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 boom, the lights, the field, and the 2 greatest words I could think of at that moment. My teammates. With a small crowd on hand, we were pounding the Padres in their home park. I watched the fellas on the field in the bottom of the 7th. AC Cash at second, Willie in left, and Scoop in center. Sangy was in right. It was the second to last time that Manny ever played the outfield for the Pirates. I was looking at Sangy out there when I was officially welcomed to the family. My bodyguard has arrived, Doc said, walking over offering a hug and 5-slap. The other guys on the bench followed suit. Even Zisk, the man in my way, nodded and offered congratulations. I heard that Richie got hot after a slow start. Didn't make too much sense that since he wasn't in the lineup, but I didn't ponder that for too long. I was feeling it, the confidence of being the biggest man on both teams, until the top of the 8th inning when the Padres took the field. They had someone just like me, 6'6" and don't need no tricks. Rookie right fielder. His name was Dave Winfield. He was the number 4 pick overall in '73. Such a great athlete. The Cat was drafted in 3 different sports. It was like that feeling I got when I entered Rookie League. Everybody is a star, times 1,000. We won the game in a blowout, 10-2, scoring 5 runs in the ninth. The Padres mercilessly left their pitcher in to give up the 5 spot in the final inning. Walking back through the tunnel, 1 of 25, man, life's greatest moments just kept coming in those hours. Boisterous clubhouse after a win. As I was changing into my street clothes, Stargell came over. "We're not scoring 10 runs a game every night," he said to me. "Just like I told you in the spring, keep a level head, never too high, never too low." And then before he went into the trainer's room, leaned into me. "I'm glad you're here. We're going to have some fun." The fellows were all getting out of their uniforms quickly and not really hanging around the clubhouse long because, well, it was San Diego. I was rooming at the Sheraton with AC Cash. He wanted to get to sleep early because he was leaving the next morning for military duty. I was just too energized for sleep, so I went down to the lobby to meet up with the boys. Hotel bars generally closed early during the week unless they knew ball players were in town. And then it was party time for everyone. I learned many differences between the minor leagues and the bigs that day, and none was bigger than what I was about to discover: the women. A bunch of the boys were just chilling and drinking, surrounded by maybe a half dozen ladies, and these were not just the fans I experienced in the farms. They knew RBIs, they knew runs scored, they knew which pitchers doctored the baseballs. These women knew more about hitting than Charlie Lau, and more rumblings from around the league than Peter Gammons. After all, they had better access. Doc and Moosey were walking through the lobby, heading out for the night. As I followed behind them, Doc turned around. He paused for a moment, as if trying to find the right words. "Damn, boy, you ain't even played a game yet. Old Verdon will have my ass if I get you out running with us tonight. Get your rest, kid. We got 3 more months of this shit." Sleep was probably best, and Doc left me with a promise as he left the hotel. "When we get to San Fran," he said, "we're going to get you some threads." The next afternoon, I was in the dugout watching the Padres take batting practice. A few of my teammates were sitting there enjoying the sun or looking over scouting reports. I saw Dave Winfield leaning against the cage. Yeah, we were competitors, but I thought we had so much in common. High-level, multi-sport athletes, rookies, a lot to talk about. I took 2 steps out of the dugout. Then Stargell told me I could get fined for talking to opposing players in front of the fans. On some level, it made sense, but I was feeling happy about finally making it and wanted to meet everybody. Winfield saw me from the cage and coolly nodded at me. I sat down next to Will. "You see the lineup card yet?" he asked me. I shook my head. "Today's your day. You know anything about Kirby?" I didn't know the Padres starting pitcher. "Used to have a great fastball," Will continued. "Now it's just a good fastball. He can be wild, too. We should have a good game." Kirby was once a prized young starter for the San Diego Padres when they came into the league as an expansion team back in '69. 5 years later, the constant losing and maybe overuse made him something of an easy target for the hitters. I was touched by Stargell's desire and passion for teaching the game. I may not have been an apple-shining A student in school, but when it came to learning at the foot of my baseball elders, I was on a roll all the way, man, and class was in session any chance I got. I looked at the lineup card on the dugout wall. I was batting leadoff and playing right field. Standing in the on-deck circle as Kirby made his warm-up pitches, I wondered about the difference in umpires, the difference in strike zones, if catchers framed their gloves differently. When the home plate umpire, Jerry Dale, yelled, "Play ball," I put it all aside and tried to do my thing. Kirby was pretty good that game. I got around late on his heater my first time up and sent a fly ball to left. The fellows only scratched out a single through the first 3 innings until Clay gave up back-to-back base hits to Sangy and Scoop, followed by a monster 3-run homer from Stargell. Guess he knew Kirby pretty good. We won the game, 4-0, and I went 0 for 4. There wasn't a whole lot of time for clubhouse post-game analysis. We needed to catch a flight to San Francisco. We got to the hotel at about 2 a.m. There were a few ladies waiting in the lobby there, too. I didn't have the energy to indulge and passed out in the room quickly, expecting a nice long slumber. About 10 a.m., there was a knock on my door. "Get your ass up, brother," Doc said, entering the room in a whirlwind. You see, Doc was starting that night, so the club flew him there a day earlier to keep the late-night travel from lagging him too much. Not every starter did this, but as you can imagine, Doc played by his own rules. "We going shopping," he said. Doc brought me to this men's boutique that catered to black fashion. Long, high-waisted striped slacks, more paisley shirts, pants, sweaters, hats, or brims as we call them. It was like one of those movies where they have scenes of the kid in the store trying on a bunch of outfits. As the cashier was ringing up our merchandise, my eyes landed on these suede 3-inch platform shoes. They were the coolest pair of footwear I'd ever seen. Doc caught me in my trance. "You like them?" Doc asked. I didn't know what to say, so he said it for me. to the woman at the register, opening his wallet. Put that on my master charge. 3 days later, it was me and Doc strutting through San Francisco International in our new threads. It was all very, very Superfly. I was 0 for my first 10 plate appearances, all flyouts and grounders to the infield, and I didn't care. In that moment, when I entered the plane entering those sweet platforms, looking at my teammates, my coaches, the traveling beat reporters trying to burrow their way into seats next to the players, my life was literally and spiritually about to take off for Pittsburgh. We were in 4th place on July 22nd, 41-48, 8.5 games behind the Cubs in the Eastern Division. The team hadn't been this low in the standings this late in the season in over 4 years. The fellows in the clubhouse kept a cool head about things. We all believed that we were the buccos and that, with our depth, things would work themselves out. Jackrabbit was still having problems. Verdon stopped sending him out there after he gave up 3 runs, 3 walks, and a dinger without retiring a batter in one of the San Fran games. Blass was now 3-6 with an ERA over 10. No one had any clue of how to fix one of our best pitchers, a total baseball mystery. I cost us a game in the Dodgers series when I didn't tag up against Willie Crawford's arm in center. We lost 1-0. Nellie Briles pitched a wasted gem. Verdon supported me after the game, though. Don't worry about it, he said kindly. You showed some thought. At least I got my first hit, a double down the right field line against Don Sutton. The best medicine for my hitting was that the last place Padres were coming to town next. Verdon sat me for the first doubleheader, with San Diego pitching their new rookie southpaw Randy Jones, and then another lefty in the nightcap, Rich Troutson. I struck out as a pinch hitter in the first game. But Verdon not only ran me out there for the 3rd game in the series, he batted me 5th behind Stargell. The Padres threw Steve Arlen against us, another promising young pitcher who took a ton of baseball pain during those early San Diego years. Dudes like Arlen and Clay Kirby lost a lot of one-run games. Arlen had good stuff, but talking beforehand, Stargell kept me focused on remembering how a pitcher got you out. Arlen tied me up with his curveball for a strikeout after an intentionally walking Willie in the first inning. Insulting, but it worked. I was going to get his ass for that. Wouldn't be in the 4th, though, when he struck me out again. Okay, I said to myself, you've seen him twice now. You know what he's got. You'll get him. In the bottom of the 6th, Willie ripped a double into the gap in right center, scoring AC and scoop. Arlen was rattled. He was going to need to start me off with some heat. He delivered, and I smacked a drive to deep center, sending Willie to 3rd. I walked back to the dugout, saying to myself, now I got him. He better not be in the game for my next at-bat. The Padres scored in the 7th to come within a run. I remembered how I cost Briles that win against the Dodgers, and here he was with another brilliant outing. I wanted to redeem myself. Bottom of the 8th. Arlen was still on the mound. I knew he was going to throw me something, and he was fatigued. He thinks he's going to start me off with a curve, I said. I'm ready. It was either a tired fastball or a hanger, but I tattooed that pitch into the right field seats. First home run of my career. Nelly got his win, and I felt vindicated. Back in the clubhouse, Verdon said to me, don't get too comfortable. You're starting the other game, too. My manager rewarded my successes and understood my struggles. Verdon liked the progression of my at-bats. Kirby was shaky early in the nightcap. A walk to AAC and a single to Sangy. He battled with Willie and struck him out, but I was thinking about Kirby from the moment I left San Diego. He thought he was going to get his fastball by me. He was wrong. Double to right field, scoring AC. 3rd inning, after Willie got his revenge with a home run, I singled to center. Then I led off the bottom of the 6th with a double to right center. It was another tight game. We were leading 5-4, and the Padres finally replaced Kirby with Mike Caldwell, a lefty. I was 3 for 3, and you can't imagine how much confidence was flowing through my veins. We loaded the bases against Caldwell. I was about to face a Major League southpaw for the first time. Zisk, Verdon called out. Grab a bat for Parker. Say what? Good game, Dave, Verdon said, patting me on the shoulder. No explanation except the manager playing the percentages. And guess what? Zisk smacked a bases-clearing double to gap in the left center. That's how it was. Me and Richie pushed one another to be our best. The reporters asked me about the game. My first moment surrounded by more than one writer. I was the focus of the doubleheader sweep by the Buccos. My quote was simple, quote, hitting for me is 90% confidence, end quote. I enjoyed a couple of gin and tonics at the Pittsburgh Hilton Hotel bar later that night with Doc and Moosey. I relished the life of a major leaguer living in a fancy hotel, but Doc brought me to another level of reality. You need to find a crib, brother, he said, dashing out his cool. Looks like your ass is going to be here for a while. AC tipped me off to an apartment complex 20 minutes outside Pittsburgh. I was all moved in, but then went 0 for 9 after the Kirby game, including my first visit to Chicago when Rick Russell dusted me with a welcome to the bigs heater aimed at my head. I laid on the ground for a few moments before I got up and then struck out. The coaches scolded me about letting a pitcher think he got the best of me. Doc won the game but sat me down afterward, insisting I keep a notebook of my at-bats, adding his comments on every pitcher's tendencies in the league. It wasn't all late-night recess with Mr. Ellis. There was still classwork, and lots of it. Verdon then sat me for a few games. Kleins was due to come off the DL. I didn't feel like they'd send me down, but the notion in this situation is always in the back of your head. If you were on the roster for more than 30 days, the ball club was required to pay you a major league salary. After a month, and as long as you contributed on the field, man, you were in like Flynn. It was my first time in New York when Doc beat the Mets at Shea Stadium, 4-1. I always enjoyed watching Doc work through the post-game interviews with the beat writers. It was close to 11 p.m. when I was dressed and ready to go back to the hotel. I was annoyed that I wasn't playing. Doc stopped at my locker. "We going out?" "I don't know, man. I'm kind of hungry. We just sold Crazy Vic to Oakland. Your ass is safe, just like I told you. Come on, we got things to do." We stopped in our hotel, the Essex House on Central Park South, grabbed a couple of friends, and headed to the Bronx. Doc had these little clubs and bars that he liked to frequent, everything from old man watering holes to underground dance clubs in Harlem to velvet rope-style establishments. And it could be some crabby cat behind the bar or a smart-mouth Irish bub. They all loved Doc because he was witty and a good tipper. It was this kind of experience in many cities. Just 3 days later, it was me, Doc, and Moosey at a singles bar in Philly after a doubleheader we split with the Phillies. I went 3 for 6 with a 2-run dinger off Jim Lonborg in the nightcap to raise my average above 200. We were standing at the bar, talking to these women. We were getting entertained by Doc and Moosey telling a funny story that I had heard in 3 other cities already, when I saw someone across the bar, beside the piano, sipping wine and chatting with a girlfriend. Straight hair, which at that time was a little different. Fair-skinned black woman, maybe a couple of years older than me. She offered an inviting smile, which I accepted as I grabbed my drink and walked over. We'll say her name was Wanda. She was a nurse at one of the local Philly hospitals, working the ER. We broke the ice by watching Doc tell his story, being all animated, waving his arms. Then we talked about her long hours and the tough things she had to see and deal with. As the night got away from us, we looked up. Doc, Moosey, and those women had split. We talked for an hour after her friend left. Then we paid the check and waited outside for a cab. It was a pretty clear Philadelphia night, but with a little chill in the air. We hopped in the taxi and drove down Market Street. Roberta Flack's voice came out softly from the front of the cab. Wanda pointed out the Liberty Bell and some other landmarks. I could almost feel her piercing gaze through the consistently moving blocks of light generated by the cab ride as it reflected blinking street lamps. "Don't you boys have curfews?" Wanda said with a playful giggle. "I think so," I said. Wanda offered an encouraging grin. "Well, I hope not." That night was my first major league experience of this kind. It was also the last time my batting average was ever below 200 that late in the season. I returned to my hotel at the Bellevue Stratford early the next morning. My roommate was still fast asleep. The Pirates usually got all the details right, but sometimes things escape their sensitivities. My roommate on the road was Gene Kleins, the man I was fighting to replace. Gene was a .327 hitter heading into the 1973 season. Not much power, but good speed and decent defense. After Roberto's death, you could understand his frustration at being passed over for the starting right field spot in favor of Sanghi. Once Verdon realized Manny was more valuable behind the plate, Kleins was the everyday guy there. He was hitting .300 as a starter until the leg injury. Now I was here, and Zisk was getting a lot of playing time. Stargell was having another elite season, and Scoop wasn't going to be removed from the lineup for anyone. Kleins often told the coaches in Verdon that he wanted to be traded. It was sad, man. Gene could have started for a half dozen ball clubs. The Rangers even made the Pirates an offer during the 72 winter meetings, but Joe Brown declined. Kleins was stuck in this situation, and it started affecting his performance. It's something that I've observed since high school. It never changes. A good player who allows a bad situation to mess with his game when he gets a shot on the field. But you know what? All angry never let it get in the way of our relationship. Kleins would go 2 for 4 against Atlanta, and I'd be the first one rooting for him. I'd make a shoestring catch in the Astrodome, and the loudest voice I'd hear congratulating me was Kleins's. I was getting nervous about the team sending me down because of the injuries and my .215 average. Me and Gino had some long talks. "They're wasting my prime," Kleins said to me in our hotel room with the lights out. His voice sounded tired and resigned. "I'm going to be 27 years old. I'm not a rookie anymore. They know I can hit, but they just won't play me." "You want to leave?" I replied. "I want to play, and I want to get my 4 years." Back then, once you played in the major leagues for a full 4 years, you were able to receive lifetime benefits from the Players Union. Send me to the Padres, California. I'd fit right in on those teams. I'd get to be closer to home, too. I couldn't say much. I was just a rookie, and we were fighting for the same job. The second half of the '73 season was like a political campaign, president of right field, and every series was another primary in which Zisk was winning delegates left and right from Kleins and me. As tough as the competition for playing time got between us, Kleins always encouraged me, always supported me, always had my back. But our clash for the starting role was nothing compared to the political firestorm that was about to hit the ball club. The Pirates were 57-60 through the middle of August, but just 3 back in second place. The Cubs were the class of the division earlier in the season, but soon began a death spiral. The Expos promoted this rookie phenom pitcher named Steve Rogers, whom everyone was trying to figure out, and the team was giving the league trouble. The Phillies were out of it pretty much all year, and the Mets were erratic, but with Tom Seaver and John Matlack, they were dangerous as long as they weren't too far behind. The Cardinals had first place and beat us 7 of 11 times before I got there. Among St. Louis, New York, and us, and even young Montreal, it was a jump ball, which made the rumors swirling around Murtaugh very odd. The beat reporters were saying that the Astros took a serious interest in offering their managerial position to Danny. Leo DeRocher was the skipper for Houston at this time, but everyone there knew he was on the way out. Rumors come and rumors go, but this was a big deal. As I said before, there's friends, there's good friends, there's lifelong friends, and then there was Joe Brown and Murtaugh. No secrets between those two. Danny knew everything about our organization and secretly advised Joe Brown on nearly every move. Verdon was doing the best he could after the Clemente tragedy and with Blas's control issues. No one expected any changes in the dugout. There was some unrest in the clubhouse, though. Besides Kleins, Bob Robertson complained, even though he was hurt, which made Scoop take some time at first. Verdon had run-ins with Hebner on more than one occasion. He even challenged Richie to a fight before a game. Hebner wisely passed on the offer. It was a weird month around baseball. Hank Aaron was approaching Babe Ruth's all-time home run record and needed police protection in the photographer's box at Three Rivers after receiving death threats. Willie Mays was rumored to be the next manager of the Mets once he retired, as New York was either looking like the best team in the division or the worst, depending on the day. Doc lost 4 straight while dealing with an elbow injury and a bum knee. Stargell got hit in the neck from a Juan Pizarro fastball and wasn't 100%. Then the rumors resurfaced about the Astros' interest in making a deal for Murtaugh. With all of this happening, we were still just 1 game back from the Cardinals, heading into a critical early September series. The next afternoon, we were leaving for the airport on a 10-game road trip. Doc hadn't pitched in a couple of weeks, so he was staying behind. I sat next to Kleins on the bus. All the fellows were joking around and wisecracking as we pulled away from the stadium. Then I heard a soft voice say, "Bill's not on the bus." Most of us turned to Willie. "I don't know," Stargell sighed, "but I bet it's not good." Will was right. Bill Verdon was fired as our manager. The Pirates didn't run a zoo-like organization. It was a family years before it became the family. The owner of the team, John Galbraith, and his son, Dan, gave Joe Brown full authority over all personnel, including the manager. After winning the previous season's division crown, Verdon earned the right to finish the final month, we felt. Many of us were shocked by the move. Back at the hotel bar in Philly, we stood around trying to figure it out. Sangy was nearly in tears. Stargell was shaking his head. It didn't make sense until we heard who was replacing him. Danny Murtaugh. Then it made all the sense in the world. I will go to my grave believing that Joe Brown blocked any other team from having Murtaugh, even at the cost of firing his own manager. Yeah, Danny had a bum ticker, but he was a baseball man. And for many of us, the life comes before everything. Women, children, even health. We took 2 out of 3 in Philly and 3 of 4 from the Cubs. By the time we reached St. Louis, the Pirates were in first, up a game over the Cardinals. The clubhouse was slightly more relaxed, if only because Danny was so familiar. And I was starting every day down the stretch. We took 2 of 3 games from St. Louis and held on to first place. We actually thought, after the nonsense between Verdon and Hebner, after losing Roberto, after Jack Rabbit's pitching problems, that we might just get another sip of that champagne. We went home to play the Mets and took Seaver to task after a rain delay messed up his rhythm, pounding them 10-3. We lost a tight one the next night as our relievers gave out 6-5, but still held on to first. It was an odd schedule thing. After the game, we flew to New York to play the Mets 3 more times at Shea. George Stone hadn't lost since June, and he kept on winning, beating us 7-3. We didn't think too much of it. We were the Buccos. We'd figure it out. Something felt weird about the following night, though. Before the game, Willie Mays announced he was retiring. The ballpark had this feeling I can't explain. There was magic in the air. It just wasn't for the Pirates. The Mets threw Jerry Koosman at us, a talented left-hander, and we went with Jim Rooker, who turned out to be another great Joe Brown pickup. Those southpaws went toe-to-toe for 8 innings until the Mets replaced Koosman with this guy, Harry Parker, no relation, who walked Bob Robertson. Danny yelled over, "Parker, grab a bat." Dow Maxville bunted the pinch runner to second. This was the biggest game of my career. A single would put us in the lead. I love big moments, but like I said, it wasn't my night. Parker struck out Parker. He got around Hebner by intentionally walking him, but A.C. Cash made him pay for the insult with a double down the line. 3-2 Pittsburgh. The Mets followed suit with the same formula: single, sacrifice, strikeout, and then a double from Duffy Dyer. You couldn't hear yourself think with the crowd screaming. Tie game, and we went into extras. The score was locked for 3 more innings. I was still on the bench, steaming about my strikeout. Another pitcher, Ray Sadecki, struck out Stargell but gave up a single to Zisk. With 2 outs, Augustin came to bat and smashed what we all thought was a 2-run homer. Zisk was booking around the bases, but then more magic as the ball hit the top of the fence, bouncing into the glove of Cleon Jones, who needed the throw of his life and got it to Wayne Garrett, the cutoff man, who launched a perfect strike to their rookie catcher, Ron Hodges. Old Polacco was out at the plate by like 7 feet. As a Pirate, I was furious. As a man with a respected throwing arm, all I could say to myself was, damn. After that, the wheels came off. John Milner walked. Kenny Boswell walked. We brought in Justy, who got a pop out to Stargell but gave up a single to the hero of the game, that catcher Ron Hodges. The Mets won 6-4. I never heard a stadium of fans so loud. We were still in first place, still up a half game in the standings, but that was really the gut punch to our season. No hanging out at the Essex House bar after that. Just straight to the room and thinking about how we were going to beat Seaver the following night, which was useless. Over 50,000 Mets fans came to that game, close to double from the previous night. It was vintage Tom Terrific, as they called Seaver in New York. Complete game win, 2 runs, 5 hits, 8 strikeouts. Danny gave Jack Rabbit one last chance to save our season, one last potential moment of glory, but he couldn't make it out of the first inning. The Mets scored 4 runs off Blass. It'd be the last game Jack Rabbit pitched in 1973. They hit 3 home runs against us that night. One of them a monster blast from John Milner, one of the few black players on the Mets. He always seemed to have our number, even if the stats don't back it up. That's what we all felt. That was also our last day in first place for the season. The Mets picked up some momentum, and we fought for the rest of the year, trying to find ours. Doc met up with us in Montreal and kept us alive with a 7-4 victory. But the rest of the way, it felt like 1 step forward, 2 games back in the standings. We finished the season with an 80-82 record, Pirates' first losing year in a half-decade. It was sad that in the final game of the season, we were playing for an extra $600 in playoff money for a second-place finish. That was beneath us. The feeling in the clubhouse was ominous. I remember Stargell was like, there's going to be changes. I didn't know what that meant, but I was confident in my performance that final month. I remember saying goodbye to Danny before leaving. He said that the organization wanted me to play winter ball in the Dominican Republic and that I should reach out to Joe Brown for the details. As I left, he extended his arm to shake my hand and looked me in the eye. Next year, Danny said to me with a knowing smile. It was 4 months of breaking news coming from all sides. I was in an airport waiting for a flight to San Pedro de Macorís when I looked at a newspaper that said, Bucks trade Cash. AC, gone. Sent to Philadelphia. Just too many exceptional second basemen in our organization. Someone had to go, and Dave knew that. The ball club loved Rennie Stinnett, but AC had skills too. The Pirates changed their mind about making Rennie a shortstop, with Tavares coming up. Cash could have played third, but the Pirates really liked Hebner, another great hitter. AC went to Joe Brown and politely asked for a trade, as it turned out. In the deal, we got back a lefty starter, Kenny Brett. He was a talented pitcher who was popular with the guys around the league. It was sad to see AC go. He was a natural leader. But there were just too many games where our pitching let us down. The team ERA was nearly a point higher in 1973 than in the previous season. If you want to say Burden made one mistake, maybe he should have kept Don Osborne as the pitching coach. We nearly led the league in ERA in 72. You don't mess with what ain't broken. Someone needed to put the staff back together, and someone needed to figure out how to fix Blast, too. I got on that flight to the Dominican Republic with one thought in my mind. Joe Brown ain't done yet. I liked playing for Águilas in the Dominican Republic. The weather was even better than Florida, and the drinks were ice cold. I ate up the exotic feel of being an athletic soldier of fortune. What else? There was this one team, Tigres de Licey, managed by the Dodgers' crazy third base coach, Tom Lasorda, who had all his boys on the roster, Tom Pekoriak, Vaughn Joshua, Rick Auerbach, Doug Rowell, Lots of Dodgers blue in the Caribbean. There was another club, Escogido. That was the Giants team. Marichal, Elias Sosa, Gary Maddox, and Gary Matthews. I hung out with them a little bit. Bill Madlock, that cat I chased down during a game back at Waterbury, was on our team that year. He always looked mean at the plate and had a menacing way about it, with his deep focus on hitting. He took so much pride in his work that it made him crazy when the fans didn't appreciate his effort. One afternoon, Madlock struck out to end the game. The crowd came down pretty hard on him, so he simply gave them the old one-finger salute. We were on the bus ready to leave when police officers walked on, trying to arrest Bill for indecency. His kids were sitting with us, crying and everything. I stood up and said, "You take him, you got to take me too." Somehow that worked. The cops left us alone. Me and Madlock became real good friends after that. We were like family more than anything. Our stadium was no great shakes. Major League Ballpark spoiled me in terms of the lights. Took a few games to get reacquainted to the smaller fields, but soon I was catching everything hit to me and hitting everything thrown my way. Our stadium included a small clubhouse with copies of the sporting news lying around. It was always a couple of weeks late, but every so often I flipped through the pages just to see the baseball gossip. About a month into my time down there, I was in the clubhouse reading a copy when I saw that Joe Brown made another move, trading for another left-handed pitcher, Jerry Royce. We gave up Milt May, who was the catcher of the future to many people. I was cool with the trade, not just because I loved Sanghi, but because Royce seemed like another gutsy starter, and we really needed that. A couple of months later, I found out that Joe made another deal. He replaced Milt with this guy, Ed Kirkpatrick, a catcher who was really an outfielder. We also got a utility player named Kurt Bavacqua. I didn't know much about him. We ended up trading our starting pitcher, though, Nellie Briles. I didn't understand it, but maybe Joe Brown knew something we didn't. I remember Briles pitched in pain much of '73. We also traded our rookie infielder, Fernando Gonzalez. He was a highly valued hitter in the organization, but again, where was he going to play? Later, I found out that Joe made the trade just to get this highly prized prospect, Wink Cole, a 19-year-old black first baseman. I still don't get that deal. It had to be all about trying to move Briles. By the middle of December, I was crushing first pitch fastballs and guessing second pitch off speed stuff, hitting close to 360 in the process. The Winter League was more about keeping my timing right for 1974 and doing everything I could to fulfill Murtaugh's expectations. We had a strong handle on the opposition. Even Tavares was hitting over 300. They really liked Frankie and were going to give him every opportunity to succeed in the spring. I still snapped him with the towel in the clubhouse, and he still didn't like it. About a week later, I called Mama before leaving my hotel room for the ballpark. I don't remember much about our conversation, except that she mentioned something she heard from a neighbor at the grocery store. I made Mama repeat herself because I couldn't believe what she said. The Pirates acquired an outfielder named Bill Flowers, my Quarter Tech high school teammate. Okay, that's it. It's on to chapter 10 next time. Thanks for watching. I've expanded this to YouTube, maybe Twitter next time. I don't know if there's any interest in watching a man read a book. But hey, if you haven't got a chance to check this out, let me get it in front of the camera. I would suggest it. And also, thank you for going on the trip with me. Story time, basically, the series here on YouTube and on Facebook. It's me reading a book I haven't read before. So I apologize if there are a couple of stumbles. No practice included, just going through it for the first time, like I presume all of you. Okay, have a great weekend, rest of your weekend, and I'll see you next week. I guess it'll be close to July.